Hello, Molweni, Sanu, Hujambo, I'm Thembekile Mkhatshwa, and this is Unwrap Africa, where every week we focus on the latest news, trends, and successes of the African continent. Siyaqhaqha. As ever, we want to hear your views on some of the biggest news stories from the continent this week. And the one we're focusing on tonight is about the US President Donald Trump, in fact, issuing another threat, basically, of more strikes in Nigeria against what he's called Christian persecution. Do you think there's more to Trump's attention as far as Nigeria is concerned, more to the attention than meets the eye, perhaps? We'll take your thoughts on Facebook, SABC Unwrap Africa, on TikTok, Unwrap Africa is who we are, and also on X, SABC News_TV as well. We'll take your thoughts here on this very issue. But first now, let's have a look at the main stories from the continent this week. Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Saar has visited Somaliland just a few days after the country officially recognized the self-declared republic as an independent sovereign state. Somalia has condemned the move, calling it an unlawful step. In Uganda, the government has announced a ban on live streams and broadcasts of, quote, riots, unauthorized processions or violent incidents. The ban comes ahead of elections where President Yoweri Museveni wants an extension to his 40 years in power. Police in Nigeria say that 30 people have been killed while several others have been abducted by gunmen who attacked a market in Niger State. The latest assault comes weeks after gunmen kidnapped more than 300 children and staff at a Catholic school in the central Nigerian state. In Ivory Coast, President Alassane Ouattara has accepted the resignation of Prime Minister Robert Bourguet Mambo, as well as his cabinet. This is after the ruling RHDP party clinched a landslide victory in legislative elections held last month. And Cape Town's lively annual Tweede Nuwe Jaar, that's the minstrels parade, filled the streets again this year, attracting huge crowds for a historic cultural extravaganza. Spectators hailed it as a powerful symbol of freedom and communal pride. We touched on this a short time ago now. Uganda is going to elections in the next week where a new president or a president and members of parliament will be chosen. Campaigning has entered its final stretch. Candidates have been making last-minute appeals to voters amid concerns about the political climate as well as potential human rights violations in the country. Here's the SABC's Michael Baleke with more.
Uganda's main presidential candidates are spending final days of campaigning, crisscrossing the country, holding rallies and meeting voters. The incumbent President Yoweri Museveni is seeking another term after nearly 4 decades in power, campaigning on stability, infrastructure and economic growth. His main challenger, opposition leader Bobi Wine, is drawing large crowds, especially among young voters, promising political change, jobs and an end to corruption. Other candidates are also making their final pitches. Though the race is widely seen as a two-horse contest, the campaign has been overshadowed by security concerns. Amnesty International this week accused Ugandan authorities of arbitrary arrests, excessive use of force and harassment of opposition supporters. The government denies the claims, saying it's maintaining law and order. Key issues for voters include the rising cost of living, unemployment, governance, and freedoms ahead of election day. Michael Baleke, SABC News, Kampala.
Elsewhere, the Nigerian government says it's doing all it can to address security challenges in the country. Thousands of people have been killed while millions have been displaced over more than a decade of instability in the country. Tessim Akende reports now from Jos.
President Bola Tinubu has declared Nigeria's security problem an emergency, and his government has set out various measures to address it. The security challenges include an insurgency which started in 2009, clashes between farmers and herders, and kidnapping for ransom payments, among others. According to the United Nations, more than 350,000 lives have been lost due to the insurgency, while over 2 million people have been displaced. President Bola Tinubu has ordered massive recruitment into the armed forces and an additional 20,000 officers for the police. Last year, he ordered the withdrawal of police personnel guarding VIPs and directed their deployments to maintain law and order in communities. Nigeria has also gone into partnership with China and the US in areas such as intelligence sharing and the manufacture of military equipment. In December, the US ordered strikes in Nigeria's northwest state of Sokoto, killing insurgents. US President Donald Trump says there could be more action taken if terrorists continue to launch attacks on innocent citizens. The government has also ordered extra military equipment. According to senior Air Force personnel, efforts are underway for the procurement of 12 helicopters from the US. States across the country are also trying to coordinate more, pushing for legislation to allow them create their own policing systems. But Nigeria's governments have been trying to solve the country's security challenges for years now with limited success. Tessim Akende, SABC News, Jos.
And Tessim's report, in fact, brings us to your responses to our question at the beginning of tonight's edition of Unwrap Africa, where we asked for your take on US President Donald Trump threatening more strikes in Nigeria over what he's described as Christian persecution. Do you think there's more to the attention that he's paying to Nigeria at the moment than meets the eye? Let's look at your responses. Mthunzi says that the US president is a terrorist, no regard for international law or any country's sovereignty. Wherever his attention is, there's more, obviously. The world must retaliate, according to Mthunzi. Moses Lebalo Letata says it's nothing more than Nigerian oil. Brian Griffin says, don't you think so must help President Trump with the Nigeria issue? And one last year from someone who goes by the name Amateur Media House of South Africa, saying no one is protecting African Christians anymore. And a reminder, as always, that the views expressed are not those of the SABC News channel, but of the viewers who are participating in the various conversations that we have throughout the day here on the channel. You're watching Unwrap Africa. When we come back, we'll look at 114 years of the ANC. Africa's oldest liberation movement is now 114 years old. The ANC, like most centenarians, faces multiple challenges, including an electorate that punished the party at the polls almost 2 years ago now. Unemployment, as well as allegations of corruption against some of its most senior leaders, as well as failing infrastructure, are among the problems that have frustrated voters who once loved an organization that helped to liberate South Africa from apartheid rule. But the leadership of the ANC today is adamant it can regroup and continue to be the most popular political party in the country. Let's talk about this further with the ANC veteran, Father Smangaliso Mkhatshwa. Very good to have you on the SABC today, Father. Give us your reflections on 114 years of the ANC. What does it mean today?
My reflection.
Correct.
Right. Well, first of all, I must apologize that cell phone is not giving me the best possible service, but I think I've sensed now the question. My immediate response would be that, one, it was a very important and good occasion for the leaders of the ANC to remind the country and the followers about the mission of the African National Congress. And what came out very clearly was that, one, the purpose of setting up the ANC was to ensure that it becomes the leader of society as a whole, not just the leader of one particular political organization. So yesterday was a kind of a celebration of that mandate, but to see to what extent that agenda can be implemented 114 years later, because the challenges that existed more than a century ago, some are still lingering on, but others have changed without, in a way, changing the fundamental challenge that has been facing this country for a long time.
Right.
So I think that was really, as far as that is concerned, it was a good occasion, not only to bring the members of the ANC together, but to remind them of the mandate which remains to be implemented today, but under very different circumstances.
But on that mandate, voters are clearly increasingly disillusioned. They've lost faith, some of them, in the ANC's ability to deliver on that very mandate. Do you believe it can change course and improve its standing with the voters?
I don't think it's impossible, really, to do that at all. But what you also have to bear in mind is that politics is always a fluid situation. It changes from time to time, and therefore you have to change your strategies accordingly. And I think that was the purpose of yesterday's, celebration. Namely that it was a kind of, the message was that we thank our forebears, those who founded the organization, that we would want to continue implementing the fundamental objective of why the ANC existed. And we take into account very changed circumstances in which we find ourselves. Mm. And the reality is that the ANC, over its 114 years of existence, has accumulated a lot of positive, experience. And as a matter of fact, if you look at the history of other liberation movements, this probably is a record. 114 years, it's a hell of a long time and so on, despite its ups and downs and challenges and so on. But the agenda remains as valid today as it was. Maybe we need, what needs to be done is that the strategies need to be adapted to present challenges that are facing the country. And I think, to be honest about it, the reality is that over the years, the ANC has also lost some, in fact, a substantial, amount of support from people that looked up to it for guidance, in fact, for the realization of the agenda of the ANC, which is in other words making sure that we transform the country so that it delivers a better life for all, not just for a few privileged.
On that point, Father, what is the greatest threat to the survival of the ANC politically? Is it strategies that are outdated or poor leaders who are failing the population?
In my opinion, I think the biggest challenge facing the ANC is that from 1994 till today, where we are today, there's been almost at this juncture, not completely, but a weakening of the link between the people on the ground and the leadership up there. So I think that's probably the challenge that is facing the ANC more than anything else. But if you compare the life of the ANC today, say before 1994, in South Africa itself, we had structures that were set up by the people which culminated in the formation of the United Democratic Front, which brought together different organizations which accepted the one agenda which united all of them and so on. And those people that later on were referred to as members of the mass democratic movement acquired a lot of experience in how to organize, how to ensure that people can work together, and how to remain focused. Now, I think that strength somehow since 1994 has weakened, actually quite substantially.
Right.
And that's why I think now the challenge is how best to dynamically relink with the people on the ground. The policies are fine. The agenda remains fine. The challenge is the implementation of these wonderful policies and our agenda.
And you were quoted, Father, back in 2017 in your reflections as an ANC veteran at the time, saying that the party's leadership, this was during the term of the now former president of the ANC, Jacob Zuma, who's also a member of the newly established MK party, you said that the party had lost the moral legitimacy to govern. Has that been regained? Does it exist today?
I think the challenge really that is, in fact, facing, in fact, everybody in the country is to ensure that the economy improve its performance so that we can then achieve a better life for as many people as possible. There are certain very specific challenges that are facing us as a country. One being the number of daily murders in the country. And most of the victims, obviously, are black people. The second challenge that has been around our necks and might even decide the fate of the ANC is the whole question of the land, that it just doesn't make sense that over 350 years, the history of this country, the land is still predominantly owned by the minority. I mean, to think that only 8% of the land is now in the hands of black people, and the rest is owned by people, the privileged few, and this is causing a lot of unhappiness, and unless that issue is honestly resolved in one form or the other, I think this challenge will continue to be with us, and it's not good for the future, of the country. The other challenge is the education system itself. Yes, there have been new policies actually involved in the crafting some of them and so on, but the difficulty is that you still have a huge difference between the haves and the have-not. The haves have the much better quality education, and which really provides them with skills and therefore a better future. And the majority of the people that happen to be in the black townships and the ghettos and so on, in a sense, continue to have, yes, indeed, better opportunities, education opportunities than before. But in terms of the quality and the direction of the education, the privileged few continue to be at a disadvantage.
Okay.
And not only the white people, also the few black people that also form part of the middle class, they are also benefiting from that. So that disjuncture, I think that a big gap needs to be narrowed quite a lot for the sake of the future of this country.
All right. Father,
So
really
I'm
good
just
to talk to you.
A few examples. Yes, those are just a few examples.
And we appreciate you giving us those examples and giving us your time on this Sunday here on Unwrap Africa on SABC News. ANC veteran Father Smangaliso Mkhatshwa. Good to have your time. Thank you, sir. Much more still ahead for you when we continue. We're in the final stretch of tonight's edition of Unwrap Africa here on SABC News, and we've been asking you this evening for your thoughts on US President Donald Trump threatening to take further military action, or strikes if you will, in Nigeria over what he's termed the persecution of the country's Christian community. Do you think there's more to this than meets the eye? Let's look at more of your responses. One here says that Christians are still the most persecuted religion on earth, according to Sandra. Okay, Ntabumdwana says there's always something behind what Trump says, sometimes very obvious, like his obsession with mineral resources of other countries. Makudi says that Donald Trump's real target is uranium in Niger. Niger has the largest deposits of the precious resource. I believe that should be Nigeria, but he says has more of this precious resource in the world. The next thing he will do is take over Niger like he did with Venezuela. Note that, in fact, Niger, I've been reading that wrong. It's Niger that he's talking about, which borders Nigeria. This is an area that Makuni says is already being targeted by US airstrikes. So this, he believes, is part of an effort basically by the Trump administration to get all the way to Niger, according to Makuni. And Gail says he's after their oil in response to our question about President Donald Trump's broader objectives, if you will, as far as the situation in Nigeria is concerned. Now, before we go, Reece Courteney Mthethwa is a talented Zambian painter who pours her heart onto canvas. Our reporter, or producer, in fact, Nondandla Mthembu, went to catch up with her and heard all the stories behind her vibrant art.
Painting is a very big deal in Africa. It is one of the ways that many artists tell of Africa's history, culture, and the beauty of what Africa beholds. Reece Courteney Mthethwa is a young, vibrant artist who says anything is a canvas to her.
We currently reside in Lusaka in Zambia. I love Zambia. It's beautiful. The people are beautiful. They're kind. They're sweet. I have been painting for as long as I can remember. Through learning different techniques and other artists and going in further into the community of art, I've learned to find a new love and appreciation for it. Africa is definitely in a space where it's coming out to the world. So I think that they're starting to somewhat meet each other in a middle ground. There are a lot of youth that are currently here that are creating brands and creating events to put certain artists on the map or expose them to the world. I see my work as an extension of myself. I see it as me pouring my heart and my soul onto a surface and allowing other people to interpretize it as they wish to or as they view it to.
And that is it for this week's edition of Unwrap Africa here on SABC News. We're back at 8 p.m. next Sunday. Stay with SABC News. Good night.